The recent publication of ultra-bizarre armored dinosaurs from the southern hemisphere has called into question what is known about both dinosaurian evolution and the evolution of the armored dinosaurs specifically. Were there weird, unknown lineages throughout the Mesozoic we can only imagine? Well, yeah. Turns out though that there were more normal lineages in these areas thought devoid of them, as a brand new armored dinosaur from Patagonia proves. Meet Patagopelta. The Ankylosaurs were a group of armored ornithischian dinosaurs that lived from the Middle Jurassic to the Upper Cretaceous. Over the last few years, the organization of the Ankylosaurs has been perpetually in a state of mismatch. Ankylosauria proper is usually thought of as the group of dinosaurs that are more closely related to Ankylosaurus than to Stegosaurus. It is further divided into the Ankylosauridae and Nodosauridae families, with the ankylosaurs largely being the round armored tail-clubbed varieties, and the nodosaurs being the spiky armored hacksaw-tailed varieties. The recent redescription of several specimens of the thyreophorn Scelidosaurus, including its holotype, suggests that the lower Jurassic basal thyreophorns are more closely related to ankylosaurs than to stegosaurs, consequently making the ancestors of the stegosaurs all the more mysterious. Even though a lot is known about the different kinds of ankylosaurs, this is mostly only true of materials from Laurasian landmasses, North America and Eurasia. Much about ankylosaur fossils from Gondwana remain unknown. Currently, the few species that are known from Gondwana are Antarctopelta oliveroi from late Cretaceous Antarctica, Minmi paravertebra from the early Cretaceous of Australia, Kunbarasaurus leversi from the early Cretaceous of Australia, Spicomelus afer from the Middle Jurassic of Morocco, and Stegoros elengasen from the Upper Cretaceous of Chile. The few known remains of ankylosaurs from Argentina and Chile have been found in rocks that are from the Upper Cretaceous. The Argentinian record is mostly made up of isolated osteoderms, or bony armor that was under the skin, from the Neuquén group in the Neuquén province, the Puerto Yarua formation in the Entre Rios province, the La Colonia formation in the Chubut province, the Allen formation in the Rio Negro province, and small pieces of bones from the Chorrillo formation in the Chubut province, and the Cerro Fortaleza formation in the Santa Cruz province. In the sediments of the Allen Formation at Salitral Moreno, Rio Negro province, Argentina, the first part of an ankylosaur skeleton was found. This specimen, found in the early 1980s and published in 1996 by paleontologists Leonardo Salgado and Rodolfo Coria, is a tooth and a postcranial skeleton with many osteoderms. This fossil was first thought to be from a nodosaurid ankylosaur because the tooth crown's cingulum was asymmetrical, and the fourth trochanter was close to the end of the femur. No phylogenetic analysis was done, though, to test this idea. As part of a larger project on the ankylosaurids in 2016, Canadian paleontologist Victoria Arbour and Philip Curry conducted an updated phylogenetic analysis of the Ankylosauridae, which included this older specimen from Argentina. The Argentinian ankylosaur specimen was found to be a nodosaurid, which backs up the original idea. Also, they noticed that the osteoderms of the neck had quite unique traits. However, Arbour and Curry's phylogeny doesn't give a clear picture of the Nodosauridae as a whole. Based on the same data matrix, later studies improved the topology and found that the Argentinian ankylosaur was a member of the Panoplosaurinae tribe. This means that it was related to the nodosaurids that lived in North America during the uppermost Cretaceous, like Edmontonia and Panoplosaurus. Rodolfo Coria and Leonardo Salgado then published a study in 2001 in which they hypothesized that the presence of ankylosaurs in the Argentine North Patagonia was due to a faunal exchange between the Americas that happened during the Campanian to Maastrichtian stages. The 2016 work of Victoria Arbour, Philip Currie, and colleagues back up this biogeographical scenario. However, an alternative hypothesis was put forward by paleontologist Zulma Brandoni de Gasparini, Xavier Pereda Suberbiola, and Ralph Molnar, all the way back in 1996, and then again by Federico Agnolin, Martin Escorra, Diego Pais, and Stephen Salisbury in 2010. This hypothesis states that a lineage of ankylosaurs evolved in Gondwana, the southern hemisphere continents, since the late Jurassic. Most doubts about the origin and evolution of South American ankylosaurs come from the fact that Australian Coonbarasaurus had both primitive and specialized traits, and that it lived separately from the Laurasian ankylosaurs during the early Cretaceous. The recent discovery of Stegosaurus and the discovery of the Parankylosauria helped solve this problem in part, but it still didn't explain why nodosaurids lived in South America. Facundo Rigetti, Xavier Pereda Suberbiola, Denis Ponce, Leonardo Salgado, Sebastián Apesteguía, Sebastián Rosadia, and Victoria Arbour recently published a paper in the Journal of Systematic Paleontology that sought to get to the bottom of the collection of South American nodosaurid dinosaur remains and to summarize all information about South American ankylosaurs from Argentinian North Patagonia and present new remains from the Salitral Moreno locality. These new remains were recovered both from the Museo Provincial Carlos Ameghino collection and from old loans to paleontological collections other than the originally housing MPCA. All of the ankylosaur bones were found in the lower member of the Allen Formation, which dates back to the Upper Campanian to Lower Maastrichtian ages of the late Cretaceous. At Salitral Moreno, about 30 kilometers south of General Roca in Argentina's Rio Negro province. These fossils were found in a few quarries from the same stratigraphic level in an area of about 50 square meters. They were found with other fossils, such as the bones and eggs of titanosaurs, the bones of hadrosaurids, theropods including birds, turtles, gastropods, and plant remains. The Allen Formation is part of the Malargate group. It was formed when the earliest Atlantic transgression event happened in North Patagonia during the end of the Cretaceous. Several recent studies suggest that the Allen Formation was formed in a continental environment, with the lower member being a fluvial to deltaic environment with moderate energy and coastal dunes in the Paso Cordoba locality. The middle member being a lagoon with fine-grained, low-energy marine deposits, and the upper member being a restricted environment with evaporites. Others have suggested a transitional environment that is affected by the sea in different ways. Layers of bentonite also show that there is a link to the active volcanic arc. Most authors see the upper member as a change in the size of the basin that caused evaporitic deposition. It has a lot of fossils that show a mix of taxa from land and fresh to brackish water. The fluvial to deltaic explanations for the lower member of the Allen Formation seem to fit with the preservation of the bones. Unfortunately, the field data for these specimens is not exactly accurate, so taphonomic comments should be taken with a grain of salt. Most ankylosaur fossils have smooth surfaces or small cracks with little wear, which points to a high energy flow that moved things over short distances. The well-preserved outside of bones that show low biostratonomic effects also suggests a high sedimentation rate, which is consistent with marginal areas of a fluvial to deltaic environment. On the other hand, some parts like the distal end of the femur MPCA SM709 and the mid-neck vertebra MPCA SM708 are broken and heavily worn, which suggests that they likely came from lag deposits. Also, these parts are all the same color, and the exposed cancellous bone is filled with the same fine, grayish, palitic-sized sediment. This is quite different from most of the other ankylosaur bones, which are filled with yellowish sand. This shows how different the sediments in these layers are. The higher erosion isn't always caused by river transport from where it was first deposited, but it could have been caused by the more energetic conditions in some parts of the channel profile, like the riverbed, which suggests a similar origin. Some of the well-preserved parts, such as the osteoderms MPC ASM73 and MPCA SM715, the back vertebra MPCA SM68, and the complete femur MPCA SM1. And the eroded parts of MPCA SM709 show bore traces and furrows likely caused by bioerosion, suggesting that many of these bones were exposed for a long time before they were buried. Several studies have been done on pieces of ankylosaurian bones found at the Salitral Moreno site. However, in this new study led by Facundo Righetti and colleagues, all the known remains were looked at and considered. Several pieces of dinosaurs from different species were found in the same level of rock in a few nearby quarries. However, most of the ankylosaurian remains have not been linked to their original source. Some differences in the bones of the ankylosaurs show that there was more than one individual. Small differences in the size of the back and tail vertebrae indicate that there are at least two different individuals. Two available synsacral pieces, MPCA SM703 and MPCA SM704, have different sizes and degrees of fusion between the vertebral elements. This suggests that there was at least a third, younger specimen. Intraspecific variation could also explain differences between tail vertebrae, like whether they have ridges on the back or a smooth surface. A neck neural arch and a neck osteoderm, MPCA SM700A and B, which are almost in their original positions, seem to have kept their original anatomical associations. Both femora, MPCA SM1 and MPCA SM709, on the right and left sides are the same size, so they may be from the same individual. Even though most of the remains are scattered or belong to more than one specimen, which is what would be expected based on the geological setting, the anatomy and a few other pieces of evidence show that these are all the same new taxon. The new material collected from the Salitral Moreno site includes a quadratojugal horn, a partial neck neural arch with an associated osteoderm, back vertebrae, two synsacral elements, front and mid-tail vertebrae, and a femoral distal end. Following the standard procedure for paleohistological samples, 3 osteoderms were cut into thin slices. With a lambda filter and a Leica DM750p petrographic microscope, normal and polarized light were used to look at the thin sections. To test dwarfism in ankylosaurs, the team used the length of the femur as a proxy for body length and mapped this into their phylogenetic analyses and dataset. With all of the old and new fossils considered, the team decided to name the new ankylosaur Patagopelta cristata, with Patago referring to the region, pelta being Greek for shield, and the species name Latin for crest. Not much can be said of the overall anatomy of the animal due to the fragmentary nature of the material. What can be said is that it was a small, round, notosaurid ankylosaur, so no tail clubs and probably some shoulder and neck armor. These remains say more about the evolution and distribution of these dinosaurs than it does about the new genus and species itself. Fossils of ankylosaurs have been found from the mid-Jurassic to the end of the Cretaceous. Some Jurassic fossils make it hard to figure out where ankylosaurs came from, and when notosaurids and ankylosaurids split off from each other. But from the Jurassic to the early Cretaceous, they lived all over the Laurasian landmasses. And more is now known about their paleobiogeography and where the Gondwanan parankylosaur lineage came from than ever before. The new analysis of phylogeny shows that not all ankylosaurs from Gondwana were closely related. Kunbarasaurus, which lived in Australia during the early Cretaceous, Stegoros, which lived in South America during the late Cretaceous, and Antarctopelta, which lived in Antarctica during the late Cretaceous, have been found to be the sister taxa of all other ankylosaurs in the Parankylosauria. Patagopelta, on the other hand, was found deep within the Notosauridae, in a clade with mostly mid-Cretaceous North American taxa. These results suggest that at least 2 groups of ankylosaurs evolved on Gondwanan landmasses. Previous paleobiogeographical hypotheses for South American ankylosaurs suggested that they moved from North America to South America between the Campanian and Maastrichtian stages. This would explain why ankylosaurs and hadrosaurids were found in Argentine Patagonia. Gasparini and friends in 1996, and Agnoline and friends in 2010, on the other hand, proposed a lineage of Gondwanan ankylosaurs that started in the late Jurassic and had forms that were only found in Australia. But the new results presented in the Patagopelta paper show a different combined picture. The Parankylosaurs are an early branch of the lineage that lived on southern continents from when Laurasia and Gondwana split up until the end of the Cretaceous. The second branch is made up of small notosaurid Ankylosaurs related to mid-Cretaceous North American forms, which supports the evolution of the late Cretaceous North Patagonian ankylosaurs. This study provides a chance to consider alternate ideas. Patagopelta is found to be closely related to some mid-Cretaceous notosaurids from North America in the family Notosaurinae. Since Patagopelta is closely related to Boreolopelta, Papasaurus, and Texacetes from the Albion of North America, it is possible that the South American notosaurid lineage began in the mid-Cretaceous of North America, at least during the Albion, which is at least 40 million years earlier than what was thought before. This alternative idea should be taken with caution because the fossil record of Gondwanan notosaurids and related species is incomplete, which means paleobiogeographical information is not exceptional. Another record of ankylosaurs from the Cenomanian to Santonian ages in Patagonian rocks could show that animals moved from North America to South America earlier than thought, but it only has an unknown tooth and some bones that could be related to earlier ankylosaur populations like those in Australia. In terms of paleogeography, it was mostly thought that South and North America were connected by land through the Caribbean during both the early Cretaceous and the late Cretaceous. This is in line with the first American biotic interchange, a biogeographical event that happened between the Campanian and Maastrichtian stages. This idea was traditionally used to explain why there were ankylosaurs in South America. The patterns of where mammals, lizards, snakes, and dinosaurs live strongly support this idea. Also, mid-Cretaceous continental vertebrate faunas from South America and Africa show that they were very stable from the Albion to the Cenomanian, and there were no new taxa until the late Campanian. A different paleogeographic hypothesis says that land connections between South and North America might have happened during the Albion to Santonian, which could mean that notosaurids spread out earlier than thought, but there isn't much evidence for this interpretation. As a whole, the rock and fossil record mostly supports a land connection between the late Campanian and Maastrichtian stages, which caused ankylosaurs to migrate. Most Patagopelta remains from Salitral Moreno are smaller than similar remains from other ankylosaurid taxa. In particular, the length of the femur is about half that of Euoplocephalus, Enodontosaurus, Dioplosaurus, and Europelta, all of which are ankylosaurids. The Patagopelta back vertebra MPCA SM69 has a centrum width of 30.4 mm and a length of 47.39 mm. This is about 35 to 45% of the same measurements in Euoplocephalus specimens and less than half the size of those in Europelta. Patagopelta material is about the same size as young specimens of the ankylosaur Pinacosaurus. Based on a number of anatomical traits, the publication team think that the Patagopelta material in question is from an adult animal. First of all, the fact that there are no visible sutures in the back vertebrae and that the synsacral vertebral elements are completely fused suggests that this material is older than a juvenile. Second, the fact that Patagopelta has well-developed post-neck osteoderms shows that it is not a juvenile. Its neck and femoral measurements are similar to those of a juvenile Pinacosaurus, but Pinacosaur specimens at this size don't seem to have any osteoderms other than those on the half rings of the neck. Lastly, though Leonardo Salgado and Rodolfo Coria said in their 1996 and 2001 papers that strong development of muscular lines on the femur show that the individual has reached an adult stage, the adult femora of several ankylosaur species don't have the same development of muscle lines as seen in Patagopelta. The team therefore thinks this is one of Patagopelta's distinguishing features, but also think that it may be linked to ontogeny if more examples of this feature are found in other species. Some authors have said that the island rule explains why the sauropod Magyarosaurus, the ornithopod Zelmoxes, and the notosaurid Ankylosaur Struthiosaurus from the late Cretaceous Hateg Island, which is now Romania, had small bodies. Some authors have suggested other reasons. It is interesting that Stegoros had a small body for an ankylosaur with a femur length of about 15 centimeters and an estimated body length of 2 meters, even though it was not closely related to Patagopelta. The team was unsure that Patagopelta lived on an island archipelago, but several marine transgressions from the Atlantic Ocean flooded the southern part of South America, making it look like an island archipelago with a mix of marine and continental faunas during the Cretaceous to Paleogene. Since South American ankylosaurs may have moved from North America during the late Cretaceous, both the Caribbean archipelago and the isolated landmasses in the north of South America were necessary routes to the south. Patagopelta may have a small body size because its ancestors got smaller when they traveled to South America. The small Saltosaurian sauropods from the late Cretaceous North Patagonian Allen Formation were also thought to have been small because they lived near islands. In Salitral Moreno, the femur and tooth of Patagopelta were found in the same quarry as the Saltosaurian Rhocosaurus. Other ideas about why South American ankylosaurs and Struthiosaurians were small include competition with hadrosaurids and the small-sized sauropods that were only found in South America during the late Cretaceous. Some researchers have also talked about pedomorphic dwarfism. In any case, all of these ideas need to be tested by getting more fossils of ankylosaurs from Central and South America and doing more histologic research. For more interesting stories about nature, the history of life, or what goes bump in the night, subscribe, hit the bell icon for updates, like this video, and drop a comment in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my elephant tier patrons: Arda Bayer, Biotiverse, Christoph Hubinger, Dinosaur, Isaiah Garza, P.A. Brew News, Ray, Rudy Redgrave, Smiling Walrus. And another thanks to my Tyrannosaurus tier patrons: Iberospinus, Iron Bladesman, Swaffles is Weird, Teeny Dragator, The Dogman,